Alleluia. Om Mani Padme Om. Allah Satnam.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and today we're speaking to John Hendriks, and he's the founder of Support Life and I Choose Life. Thanks for coming, John.
Thanks for having us.
Those two organisations are to do with abortion. How come you're involved in that? Where does that come from?
Well, it's a long story, so depending how much time we have, but basically how it started was most church groups that I was attending and prayer meetings and things like that, throughout my week, most of them were focusing on prayers for abortion. And I wanted to know a little bit more about it, and everywhere I seemed to go, it seemed to be discussing about pro-life, the pro-life movement. I didn't know much about it, to be honest. I knew it would exist. I knew it existed, and I was aware that there are abortion laws in Victoria, but I didn't have a personal relationship in any way with it.
Right. So the church you were attending, that's a Catholic church?
The Catholic church, yes. I am a Catholic, yes.
Right. And so being a Catholic gives you an attitude to abortion, doesn't it?
I believe so. I must admit, for the number of years that I've been a Catholic, I haven't felt a real presence in the church about pro-life. I know there's been a discussion, and there's been the odd person that has stood up, giving a speech or maybe telling us about something, but there really is just not enough happening within the Catholic Church. And that's not criticism about the church, that's just a reality.
Yes.
From being a Catholic, is that I haven't seen a great deal of passionate people coming out of the church saying, we're against abortion, and educating us and telling us about it. So it's a little bit disappointing, and God put it on my heart to do something about it only recently, really in the last sort of year or two. And since then I've been gathering information, attending prayers, meetings. I've been to the March for the Babies, and it's really building momentum.
Well, your Catholicism had a refreshing though, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
Yes.
That's correct, it did. I was baptised a Orthodox, and I went to Catholic schools, and then through my education, I was in Catholic high school and primary schools. So I felt a real love for the Catholic Church. I served on the altar as well, and I was, I really had a heart. I grew up telling my parents I wanted to be a priest. And that didn't eventuate. Far from it, I have to say. Some viewers probably, knowing me, think that's not.
That's not John.
No, that's not John. But that's okay. I mean, I was a young person, and they were some of the things that I had believed. But when I was married, I got married at 21, and I wasn't a Catholic. But to be married in a Catholic church, I needed to become Catholic. So I was instantly rebaptised again, right, into Catholicism.
Catholicism, yes, yes. And so that has been. Has there been a regeneration of your Catholicism, which has caused you to perhaps move in this pro-life way? Yeah,
look, I think I was attending church and fairly active, during my young adult years, but I did move away from the church. I guess I didn't have the relationship with God that I do now. And around about the age of 40, my life was basically in pieces. Unfortunately hit the divorce and was a single man, and the business was, really shaky at that stage, and I just looked for God. I looked for guidance from God and help and prayer, and I went back to God and I said, help me out here. I'm really in trouble. You know, I know you're there. Come out and help me. So I guess you could say I probably asked for a deal with God. I asked him if he could, you know, save my life and get me back on track in my personal life and my, you know, financial life, that I would devote, you know, the rest of my life to God and to be back in the church, which I did.
It's obviously happening. So abortion is a very tricky issue in the sense it's very divisive in our community. What's your basic stand on abortion? Obviously pro-life, but abortion itself, the abortion clinics, etc., etc. How do you feel about how it's in society?
Well, the very first thing is that I'm not about condemning anybody that's had an abortion or that's chosen to have an abortion. People make decisions in their life based on the circumstances at the time and based on the information and the knowledge that they're aware of the particular situation, and sometimes they feel that they've got no other direction to take, and they feel that's the only direction. So the first thing is we, you know, whilst it's disappointing and we feel like people are you know, making the wrong call, we don't want to condemn them. But we want to bring awareness to the people of Victoria about that, you know, life is sacred, that abortion isn't the first resort. It should be no resort. You know, it should not be the last resort or the first resort. It should not be on the agenda at all. Why simply because there's a child there. It has been legal in this state for the past 40 odd years. So people have been conducting abortions legally for the last 40 years. So it's not like it hasn't, you know, been legal. It has been legal, but whether something's legal or not, I guess morally, you know, how do you feel about morally? Should you be doing it morally?
That's correct.
Yeah,
yes.
that's.
So you're trying to readdress a moral issue and raise awareness of it.
Yeah, that's correct. That's what we're trying to do with our groups. We're trying to get out there and speak to people and say, you know, look, are you aware of, you know, the fact that.
I'll tell you something else I'm aware of. Time is running out, so we'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment.
Mani Allah, Alleluia, Mani Allah.
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and today we're speaking to John Hendriks, who's the founder of Support Life and I Choose Life. John, I think you took part in the March for Babies. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, initially I was a bit apprehensive. I wasn't sure exactly what was going to go on that day. I mean, I knew that there was this group led by Bernie Finn, and I knew that they were trying to make awareness throughout Victoria. But when I attended the first rally, you know, there was a lot of information that I became more aware of. First thing is I was really excited on that day to be there. There was 3,000 or 4,000 people there. I was really happy to be part of that. My family came along as well, and they were also, you know, like their eyes were opened, you know, when they saw the amount of people, older people, younger people, children, you know, parents in prams just walking down with their kids through Flinders Street, you know, up Russell Street. You know, there were protesters there. They were anti-life, pro-abortion protesters, pro-choice, I guess. Yes. But that's okay. That didn't worry us. But the message was loud and clear. There are, you know, thousands of people in Victoria who do not support abortion, and they wanted to demonstrate to the Parliament, and it was the specific date that they had it, which was about the second week of October, is the anniversary date of the passing of the Law Reform Act in 2008 through Parliament.
So it was significant. Was there much emphasis on the Dr. Hobart issue there? Were there Dr. Hobart type signs and things around the place?
Yes and no. I mean, the message of the March for the Babies is clearly about is just about the general stop abortion, change the abortion laws. The Dr. Hobart case is, he specifically gave his professional opinion and said that he didn't agree with abortion. And that's where he has contravened the current Section 8 of the Law Reform Act, which specifically states that if you have a conscientious objection to abortion, you're not able to tell your client that. What you must do as a doctor is you must then refer that client to another doctor who you know will conduct an abortion. Yes. That's pretty much what he said. He got up and he was the only doctor that got up and said, "Hey, I don't agree with this. I'm not doing it." Now, since then, we understand and we know that there's probably another 50% of the doctors, the professional doctors out there who also agree with him. Yes. And they've signed a petition, and that went to Premier Napthine in about August of this year. Yes. That was delivered to his office, and they got about 4,000 or 5,000 signatures from doctors saying that they don't agree, with Section 8 and that should be repealed. So that's what that was all about.
Yes, and that has some fairly serious implications ethically in other areas as well. So it's not just a pro-life issue, I'd suggest. So out of that grew these two organisations, Support Life and I Choose Life.
Yes.
I Support Life. Support Life, what's that?
Well, Support Life was a name that we specifically came up with because we wanted to show that we are committed to a pro-life program, and it's through this station. We're hoping at this station, Channel 31, will approve a pilot show for a program which supports pro-life, for the pro-life movement. Yes. But also about social issues as well, not just only pro-life, but issues, concerning our community, things to do with life, because there seems to be quite a lot of discussion and movement these days about, about general life and life conditions and social sort of discussions on all these sort of topics, and people are getting lost in that whole discussion. I mean, what's the truth behind it all? Yes. So what we're planning to do is, one, build awareness. Two is tell people the truth the way it is, so people are aware. There are a lot of people that I've spoken to that are not aware of what's going on with with the abortion laws. They don't know the abortion laws. They don't know that you can terminate a child, a baby, right up until birth. They're not aware of that. Yes. So through media, through this program and other programs, and through social media, Support Life will get the message out there very strongly, so people are aware of it. So Support Life could expect that it might address issues like drug abuse, perhaps. Yeah, perhaps it is. It could. I mean, it could. I mean, anything to do with the protection of the sacredness of life, telling people how sacred your life is. That's right. From conception until natural death. And that opens up discussions about euthanasia, yes, which we refer to as assisted suicide. It opens up, all sorts of things as well about, same-sex parenting. And other issues as well, regarding the termination of life, and recently the meaning in the dictionary, yes, of life as conception has actually been changed recently. The past 27 editions had conception of life as being when the embryo's, yes, formed, when it's conceived, but they've changed it now, and they've changed it from the embryo to, I think, till when the egg's forming, which is about...
There's another concept, and it's a concept of time, which we'll run out of. We'll pick up that egg in a minute.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment.
Mani Allah. Alleluia. Mani Allah.
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and today we're speaking with John Hendriks, and he's the founder of Support Life and I Choose Life. John, I interrupted you in the point of talking about the redefinition of conception. Now, that was in a medical journal that you read that. Just take that a bit further. So what are they saying?
Well, what the experts are now saying, and it's the first time that they've changed that definition in 28 editions. So 28 years, the medical journal comes out each year, and they've, you can't quote me exactly on this because I'm not a doctor, but they've changed the definition of conception from when natural conception is, which when a lady falls pregnant, when the egg obviously hits and is formed, to some weeks later. Now, I'll have to brush up on it for you, Norm, and perhaps tell you in our next discussion, but I'm aware that they've changed that to some weeks later. And what that effectively does, if new doctors coming in the system are reading that for their definition, no longer is it God's definition that conception is when, the egg meets the sperm. It's now been moved forward some sort of 4 or 5 weeks or 6 weeks. Now, we know that that's not the case. We know that a baby is starts off at conception. We know that, but if they're successful in changing these definitions, then obviously they can refer to a child as not being a child. It's not even being conceived. It's just a bunch of cells, and it's just a bunch of things that are going on in there that is not really a child. So that's what they're now starting to teach our doctors.
Yeah, that will have to be troubling in anyone's language, pro-abortion or otherwise, because once again, if they can do it with that, they can do it with other things. So we're looking at a crux of a very important issue. You had this second organisation, I Choose Life. Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, that organisation's been running for about 3 or 4 years, and it was running under a slightly different name. It was run from home as a small charity, and we called it Robin Hood, and it would just do some fundraisers and some local activities for schools and parishes and church groups. It was doing quite well. We'd raise some money, and those funds would go towards people in need. We did some fundraising for some people in India, in Indonesia, quite a bit here locally as well, here in Melbourne, where there were people in need, so we needed to raise some funds. So we had a function, and we're still involved in that, but then it progressed on a bit further on, and we've now set it up as a public benevolent association, and it has it's currently before the tax office for an application for approval for charity status, for DGR status, which will mean any deductions, any donations will be tax deductible, which will allow us to fundraise in a larger form, and its principal activities are dealing with people, looking after people's financial hardship needs.
Yes.
So people that are suffering from broken marriages, or lost their jobs, or their car's broken down, or they might be just mentally or physically sort of recovering from different things, and they're not able to earn income. So we're helping as many people as we're able to.
Well, that's a very laudable activity, and it clearly is growing, and so that the span of areas that you would assist people, it's mainly life issues with money and work and those sort of things.
Yeah, that's correct. It's mainly people who recovering from drug or alcohol addiction.
Right.
People who are unemployed, they've been out of the workforce for a while, or they're underemployed.
Yes.
They're only working part-time, so they don't really have an income to be able to support their families. We've also helped a lot of groups. There's a few groups that I can think of, like the St Benedict's Parish was where myself and my wife are part of that parish, and we've supported them, and the MGL brothers and sisters. We've done the Divine Mercy. The Divine Mercy publications, which is run by John Canavan, who's a friend of mine. So we've attended some of those presentations and conferences they've had, and it's a fantastic message. So we believe in those things, so we're happy to support those things along the way, and it's good to see they flourish. As a result of God giving us the providence to be able to help others.
Yes, you've mentioned drugs a couple of times, because coming back to Support Life, there's what are your activities in relation to the use of drugs, and that includes all of them, during pregnancy, because there's an outcome from that which is very unpleasant for children often.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I guess it's pretty sad to understand that unfortunately, mothers will abuse drugs during pregnancy, and it does certainly affect the child. Even smoking's a drug, or alcohol.
That's right.
And again, it's generally people who are suffering some sort of depression, or are not able to get back into normal society, or maybe don't have the family support around them. So what we're about is trying to bring that support and awareness to those people, and help them get a better life, and better life for themselves and for their children, and try to perhaps lead them to God if we can. If they're open to that, we try and speak to them. So we're delighted to see a couple of people doing very, very well in the recovery process, and some of them we've seen back to full health and full life, and we've been really delighted with all of that.
We're getting close to end of time, but if you could just sum it up and say the future, your future activities, is there a big target activity?
Well, Support Life would like to see the Law Abortion Reform Act repealed, the whole thing repealed, but for the short term, at least Section 8. And for I Choose Life, well, I'm hoping that God gives us continued providence to be able to help more and more people, and maybe for my children to perhaps take over the charity, and a lot of other young people to get involved with the charity organisation and continue that work.
And work it is, John, and you've got that visionary approach towards it, and so there's a lot of impetus there in an area which has important today, but also important because of the ethical issues perhaps for tomorrow and a long way into the future. John, thanks very much for your time, and good luck with these undertakings.
Thank you very much.
You've been watching Harmony and Diversity, and we'll be back next week.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om, Allahu